Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media.
Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to Cub Creek in Bridger-Teton National Forest in Wyoming. This area ranges in elevation from 6,000 feet to 13,000 feet above sea level. The high altitude creates a continental climate with long, bitterly cold winters and warm, dry summers. The elevation creates microclimates that can showcase different species. At lower elevations, sagebrush and grasslands give way to forests of lodgepole pine and Douglas fir. The middle elevations consist of forests of Engelmann spruce, subalpine fir, and quaking aspen stands. In high elevations, alpine meadows, grasses, and wildflowers cover the ground beneath white-bark pine trees towering over them. This diversity in the ecosystem creates a cycle of differing food sources requiring grizzly bears to traverse each of them to gather needed nutrients at different times of year. Bridger-Teton National Forest covers 3.4 million acres and lie adjacent to Yellowstone National Park, making it a major target for scientists to research. In addition to vital grizzly bear habitat, the national forest hosts many important plants, but to study these plants, researchers must put themselves in the heart of prime grizzly bear habitat, and it doesn't always turn out well. In early September of 2014, 31-year-old Adam Thomas Steward from Virgin, Utah, was heading to Cub Creek to complete a vegetation survey for the U.S. Forest Service. The Ecological Assessment Service he worked for, nature's capital, out of Boise, Idaho, had won the bid and sent Stewart out to do the work. Now, Stewart was very active, enjoying cycling and backpacking, and was a boisterous advocate for the environment. Accepting the assignment by his firm was not only an obligation, but a privilege in his mind, as he knew it would help conserve the wilderness he so loved. Being an educated scientific researcher, Stewart likely brought along bear spray and possibly a firearm. I could not find a source to verify he did so, but it would be surprising if it were not so. There was no report of a dog going along with Stewart on the survey as well. Now, Stewart was not lackadaisical about venturing into remote bear country. Before he left, he expressed strong reservations about surveying the plot by himself, commenting that he didn't want to run into a bear that wanted to fatten up. Checking in with coordinators in nature's capital, Stewart began the hike to Cub Creek from the Brooks Lake trailhead near Tagwati Pass on the morning of September 4th, 2014. After a few hours and several miles of hiking, he arrived at Cub Creek and pitched camp at around 8,800 feet in elevation. Stewart must have had plenty of energy left as he hiked the remaining 3 miles to the survey plot at around 10,000 feet in elevation. At a little over 9,300 feet in elevation, Stewart came across a point in the trail with a small rise, followed by a slight decline. It isn't clear if he smelled the rotting deer carcasses that the grizzly had cached, but even if he had, he wouldn't have time to react. As you can see on this diagram, Stewart topped the rise, took the first few steps down the incline, and entered a radius of around 30 feet from the cached deer carcasses. The grizzly had carved out a daybed at a point just beyond the carcasses that is assumed to be the point from which it advanced on Stewart. This means that the grizzly surprised the researcher from a distance of around 30 feet, leaving him no time to deploy bear spray, if he had it. Back at the Nature's Capital offices, Stewart's return was expected on September 5th, but for some reason they didn't report the man missing until the 7th. A broad-sweeping search effort was launched soon thereafter. The search and rescue teams coordinated with law enforcement and volunteers to cover as much ground as they could for the next 5 days. On September 12th, about 1.5 miles north of Stewart's campsite, searchers discovered a horrible sight. The smell of death hung heavily in the air as the searchers arrived to look for the source. After a brief search, they located 2 mule deer carcasses that had been cached by a bear, but only a few yards from the carcasses, they also found Stewart's corpse. An investigation into his death soon followed and included an inventory of his equipment. A timestamp on Stewart's camera displayed the time as 5 p.m. They took this to mean that he was attacked at some point soon thereafter. Investigators scoured the attack site and pulled hair and tracks from both a black bear and a grizzly bear. Stewart's body was collected and delivered to Fremont County Coroner Ed McCausland for examination. His body was so tattered that the coroner refused or couldn't identify specific wounds that led to his death. Instead, he stated that his injuries were consistent with a bear attack. The only injury that was commented on by the coroner was that Stewart had died from blunt force trauma. I could find no source indicating that the grizzly that killed Stewart was sought to remove it from the population. It is likely that due to the bear's reactions in defending itself from a perceived threat and in defense of the deer carcasses it had cached, Stewart's death was notched up as a case of wrong place and wrong time. There was no mention of cubs being present anywhere near the attack site. Speaking of cubs, our Cub tier membership on Patreon, linked below, will give you ad-free early access to our episodes, and the $3 per month goes a long way in helping me to continue to produce educational and entertaining content like this. Following Stewart's death, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration investigated the working conditions surrounding his employment. They cited Nature's Capital with several violations and levied a fine of just over $13,000, a sum Stewart's father described as insulting. In reaction to his death, a pamphlet on safety in the wilderness was developed for employees, and guidelines were published for safety. Stewart's death was the first fatal bear attack in Fremont County in the last 40 years. It marked the fourth human death in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem since 2010. In that 4-year span, there was at least one human fatality by a bear each year in this area alone. The tragic death of Adam Steward underscores the inherent dangers of conducting research in remote wilderness areas inhabited by large predators like grizzly bears. It highlights the critical need for stringent safety protocols and comprehensive training for individuals working in such environments. As conservation efforts continue to support the recovery of grizzly bear populations, it is imperative to balance these initiatives with measures that ensure human safety. Stewart's passing serves as a somber reminder of the delicate balance between wildlife conservation and human activity in shared habitats. His contributions to ecological research are remembered by colleagues and the broader environmental community, reinforcing the importance of safety in the pursuit of scientific understanding. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. If Stewart were armed with a shotgun, would he have survived, or would he have had no time to utilize it? Do you think the government can alert citizens by using drones now to search for animal carcasses cached by bears? Why did the authorities and Stewart's company wait so long to send out a search team? I'll gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it.
Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider clicking on the like button and clicking on the bell icon. We'll help you know when we post our new episodes. Posting our video links to your social media profiles furthers awareness, and it's fun. We slashed our prices in our merch store, linked below, so check out the bargains there while you shop. As a member of our human community, remember to adventure bravely and be careful out there, especially in bear country.